Hello everyone, my name is Nada. Welcome back to my channel. So, basically, I just filmed an entire video for like 30 minutes. None of it was recording because my phone died. I feel delirious. I was tired when I started filming tonight. It doesn't matter. But today's video is about the movie Glass Onion, a Knives Out story, and how it was kind of bad. Like, it wasn't bad, but compared to Knives Out, it was bad. So we're going to talk about that today. This is my channel where I talk about literally whatever I want, and if that's something that's interesting to you, if you like to talk about movies, TV, books, clothes, whatever, this is the place for you. So please subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up because that really helps me find other people and it'll make me feel like doing twice the work was actually worth it. I want you to be able to kind of understand what we're going to be talking about over the course of this however many minutes. I love Rian Johnson. I love his films. I love his writing. I think he's such a talented man. I found out while I was filming the first time that he's from Silver Spring, Maryland, and I feel like that's why I feel connected to him. I really do. I bet we were born in the same hospital. I watched Glass Onion, a Knives Out story, on New Year's Eve with my niece. While we both enjoyed it, like you liked it, right, Lillian? Yeah, we both enjoyed the process of watching the movie, but to me, having seen the first one and also having seen other films that Rian Johnson has made, it wasn't his best work. And I want to talk a little bit about why I think it wasn't his best work, which isn't just that he's lazy or that it was like phoned in. I feel as though like if the justification is that he just wanted to dunk on Elon Musk, then that I kind of get. But like compared to his other films and the commentaries that he's making in his other films, it feels as though this commentary feels a little bit more phoned in and less grounded than those other films. And I want to talk about that. I also am going to talk a little bit about Marxist critical cultural theory. So, if that's something that interests you and how that impacts Rian Johnson's filmmaking, especially as he has gained more recognition over the course of his career. And I also wanted to talk about the Reddit threads that inspired this video. I'm going to try and link them down below because I read a couple of Reddit threads about the movie Glass Onion because I was trying to figure out, I was like, why didn't I like this one as much as I liked Knives Out? And it really helped me to kind of peel apart the layers of the onion of why I didn't like this one as much. And so that will be linked down below along with some resources about Marxist critical cultural theory, God willing, if I have the time. And yeah, let's talk a little bit about Rian Johnson. I don't stan white men, so I can't say that I'm a Rian Johnson stan, but I do really like his movies. I remember watching Brick when I was 14 in high school, and it literally changed my idea of what I thought that film could be. It does play into that trope of the like beautiful dead white girl and the hardened white man avenging her murder. But the mystery in that movie is so compelling. The characters are so enthralling. Like, I really felt drawn to them the entire time I was watching the movie. He made the 2012 film Looper, which I've never seen. Brick came out in 2005, I think. He made Looper, which I've never seen, so it's not really going to be included in this commentary because I don't know anything about it. And then he also directed and maybe wrote, I'm not entirely sure, The Last Jedi, which is the second film in the rebooted Star Wars series. And most recently, he's come out with the 2 movies in the Knives Out series, which are a part of a deal that he has with Netflix to produce 3 separate Knives Out films, which are going to be essentially murder mysteries starring the detective Benoit Blanc, played by Daniel Craig. Something that really appeals to me about Rian Johnson's films is that he takes the perspective of the underdog, this idea of the underdog being somebody who can do whatever they want in life. Like, even if you come from nothing, you can still have an important impact on the world. We see that in the film Brick because the main detective in that movie is basically about a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He finds out that his ex-girlfriend gives him a call and says a bunch of weird stuff, and then the next day he finds out that she has been murdered and she was pregnant. I think she was either with her dead body was a missing brick of heroin, or she got killed over a missing brick of heroin, something along those lines. He then sets about finding out how and why his ex-girlfriend died, and kind of sifting through the underworld of this high school setting that he's in order to do that. Baby noir. It gives like the Maltese Falcon, or that other book by any Dashiell Hammett novel, basically. These are not references that are current that like young people will get, but just, you know, like 1940s film noir set in a 2005 high school. The underdog in this story is the young detective, Brendan Fry. His name is Brendan Fry. Rian Johnson is really good at constructing a web and slowly unraveling it over the course of a film. And at the center of these webs is the idea that the underdog, people who come from nothing, can succeed to great heights. Now, whether that's with the help of people who do come from something or not, it depends. And we think about Brick too, like who is the antagonist in that movie? It's the rich girl. Yeah, the antagonist in that movie is the rich girl, Laura, who has this family wealth yet still insists on selling drugs and like dabbling in what the poorer people do for survival, and it ends up being her undoing. So, to me, Knives Out can be read as a commentary about nepotism, Nepo babies, that whole inheritance cycle. The villains in the movie are literally all of Harlan's family. If you haven't seen the movie, or if you haven't seen it in a while, Knives Out is about an aging crime writer named Harlan Thrombey who dies of an apparent suicide. The police assume that it's a suicide, but someone in his family hires the detective Benoit Blanc to come to his home and investigate because they think that he's been murdered. When he dies, it is discovered that he has left his entire inheritance to his nurse, who's from a country in Latin America that I don't... They're constantly, like, mixing up what country she's from, and I didn't skim the Wikipedia good enough to figure out where she's from, but she's from some country in Latin America. That feels so reductive. I'm so sorry. He leaves his entire fortune to her, and basically the idea that the family has, that his family has, is that she's either seduced him or tricked him or blackmailed him or killed him herself in order to... Harlan himself seems to have come from fairly humble beginnings and like built an entire empire for himself through his crime writing, and he's created basically this like many-headed monster, which are his children and his grandchildren, who are entitled, covertly racist pricks who assume that just because they are his family, they deserve the wealth that he has created for himself. We see like the actual... I guess like I could say the karmic cycle in this film. His wealth skips right over his family, who were given all of the advantages in life, and goes straight to the next closest self-made person in his life, who is Marta. And she never made any advancements on his wealth. She never asked him for money. She never seemed as though she was somebody who would feel entitled to his money. And so that's why he decides to leave the money to her. It's all rooted in greed and this level of entitlement that these children of privilege have, and this lack of self-awareness and introspection that these children of privilege have. I think all the time about the Catherine Langford character, who sees herself as this like woke, intelligent, kind person, but when it comes time for her to use Marta's mother's status as an undocumented immigrant against her, she's more than willing to do it if that means that she's going to continue to be able to live the life of luxury that she's accustomed to. The entire film, Knives Out, to me feels like a takedown, not even necessarily a takedown, but a critique of people who come from privilege and how that privilege can begin to rot the core of who you are. That critique in Knives Out feels very grounded. It feels rooted in something that Rian Johnson himself experiences, understands, sees, like he is writing from the inside out. He and the audience in that way are on the same page, because he is also someone who, as far as I can see by my Googles, my Wikipedias, has not come from privilege and has been able to break into the film industry on his own merit. The criticism comes from an informed place. Glass Onion, in my opinion, does not feel as grounded as Knives Out because the criticism doesn't feel like it's coming from an informed place. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the critique in Knives Out feels more grounded because Johnson is on the same footing as the audience. Most of us don't come from a highly privileged family. Like, we are Marta the same way that he is also Marta. In Glass Onion, it feels less grounded because he doesn't see his own role in it. A self-made director who originally did indies and then starts doing like big franchise films for huge studios, that's an archetype that would fit in perfectly on that island, but that it feels kind of like Johnson doesn't realize his own role in the movie. Like, he doesn't realize that he's criticizing his peers, not these people that are just like so outrageous and out of this world. So, just a brief overview of what the film Glass Onion is about. A bunch of rich people end up going to an island. They're invited by an Elon Musk-esque person played by Edward Norton. He's like this tech magnate, and they're all financially dependent upon him in some way, very similar to Knives Out. They're invited to this island for this murder mystery party that he's planned, and as tends to happen in these films, books, TV shows, somebody ends up actually dying. And so Benoit Blanc, who is Daniel Craig's character, is tasked with solving the murder of the person who dies on the island. I felt watching this movie that a lot of the plot twists were predictable. And the ones that I wasn't able to predict, it was probably because I was a little bit drunk, because it was New Year's Eve. The first twist is that okay, so like here's the dramatis personae. We have Catherine Hahn playing a governor from Connecticut who's running for Senate. Her campaign is being funded by Miles Braun, played by Edward Norton, who is the tech magnate Elon Musk synecdoche in the film. Leslie Odom Jr. I almost said Lamar Odom Jr. LOL. Leslie Odom Jr., who plays, I don't remember what his name is, but he is an employee. Ian? I don't know. He is an employee of Miles Braun, and he's like the head engineer or whatever. Kate Hudson, who plays a washed-up model who is like running this sweatpants empire. This very successful sweatpants empire that is funded by Miles. Dave Bautista, who plays a Twitch streamer slash influencer whose career was basically jump-started by Miles. And then there's Dave Bautista's girlfriend, Whiskey, played by Madeline Klein from Outer Banks, and Kate Hudson's assistant, whose character was barely in the movie and whose name I can't remember. And then there is Janelle Monáe playing Andy slash Helen, twins. Andy was Miles' former business partner who got forced out of the business, and Helen is Andy's twin, who we don't find out until halfway through the movie, even though it's not that surprising. And then Daniel Craig plays Benoit Blanc. Those are all of the characters in the film. A very familiar cast of characters to anyone who has been, and it takes place during the pandemic. These are all like incredibly rich people who are traveling during the pandemic that the poors were too afraid to go anywhere during. These are familiar characters. A politician, an influencer, a model slash actress slash influencer slash businesswoman. She's basically Gwyneth Paltrow. It's Gwyneth Paltrow. A tech billionaire like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. His flunky, played by Leslie Odom Jr., and his smarter than him, well-meaning, appropriately cautious business partner slash woman in his life who ends up getting cut out. The wives of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and every other tech magnate, billionaire, Bill Gates, everyone. These are all familiar characters to us, the audience. The issue with the film to me is two-pronged. One, the plot twists were not that interesting. I have read a lot of Agatha Christie, and this movie was essentially just like ripped from the pages of an Agatha Christie novel. The issue with this movie is that the criticisms of the rich and famous feel very hollow and uninformed coming from a person who is himself rich and famous. it's not things that we've never heard before. Like, I think about writing about his peers, people who live in the same world as him, whether he likes it or not. Like, whether he likes it or not, he is on this certain tier. He directed a Star Wars movie that grossed $1 billion worldwide. Like, you are rich, you are famous. And so he's writing about his peers, people who are in his world, whether he likes it or not. So he's no longer this underdog character that he identifies with in his writing. And it just feels like the observations about the rich and famous aren't from an internal perspective, from the perspective of someone who is also rich and famous, but rather from, he's trying to put himself into the shoes of the audience and acting as if he's on the same level as majority of the audience when he's not. Like, if we are watching this movie, we are either a person who is not rich and famous, who is like, this feels kind of hollow to me, a person who is rich, who's like, oh, haha, that's funny, this like fun mystery is funny, or a person who's rich and famous who's like, oh, that's cool, I finally feel like I have access to how the normals think about me and people like me. I hope that made sense. If that didn't make sense, ask me a question in the comments down below. This is the same problem that I have with TV shows that feel like they're just Twitter regurgitated. You know that Quinta Brunson quote where she's like, the reason that Abbott Elementary is so successful is because people were tired of seeing Twitter be reproduced on their TV screens? This is the same problem that I have with TV shows that, like The Bold Type and Good Trouble, which both happen to be on Freeform, which is that the conflict is so close to our reality, the audience's reality, that when it's off, it feels almost as though it's something that comes from the uncanny valley. Like, it's trying so hard to resemble our reality and resemble the life experiences of people who are poor, underpaid, not rich, not famous. Like, the way that we would view the world, that we see it and we're like, oh, this is not right. So there's something off about this. It's easier for us to see what does not ring true because we know what the truth is so intensely. We live it every day. But if you no longer are living in that, then it's hard to write from that place. That's why Knives Out still feels fresh and intimate, because Rian Johnson is still coming from a place of he's always going to understand what the experience of not being a nepotism baby or not being a person who comes from wealth and status is, because that's just his life experience. That's what he was born with. He wasn't born with the last name Abrams or Spielberg or Coppola to skyrocket his career into film and television. He wasn't born into this world the way a lot of other people were. So he's always going to understand that. What he doesn't understand anymore is what it's like to be someone who isn't constantly surrounded by people of extreme privilege. And so watching characters like Kate Hudson's Gwyneth Paltrow-esque character, or Dave Bautista's like men's rights activist Twitch streamer, it doesn't feel real because he's not criticizing these people from his position as a rich, famous Hollywood director. He's criticizing these people as if he is as if he is a member of the audience of this film, looking at the opulent lifestyle that all of these people live and being like, damn, isn't that stupid and silly and crazy and whatever. I could excuse all of this if this film was just an excuse for him to dunk on Elon Musk, which in a lot of ways it feels like it is, but the quotes that he's given make it seem like he's not purposefully trying to make fun of Elon Musk through the movie. But you know, rich people lie, famous people lie, celebrities lie. So if that's what I choose to believe, then that's what I choose to believe. The things that he's saying about Elon Musk feel real because none of us are the richest person in the world. Nobody's the richest person in the world. We can all look at him and be like, oh, he's stupid and annoying because he's the richest person in the world. But it's also stuff that has been said before, that he's not that smart, that none of his ideas are original, that everything he has he stole from people who were smarter than him. Like, this isn't new, these aren't new innovative ideas about these people. It's just kind of like regurgitated talking points that it feels like he maybe read on Twitter or saw somewhere that just don't sit right. That's why we feel kind of grossed out when we watch TV shows and movies that are about rich people making fun of rich people. It's because it's like you're making fun, or not even necessarily that are about rich people making fun of rich people, because sometimes it's fun to watch rich people make fun of rich people. Like Arrested Development is funny, but it's because the Bluth family is absolutely ridiculous. The characters in Glass Onion are not, they're not elevated and camp enough to be like just absolutely ridiculous, you know, like the characters from the movie Clue or something, and they're not grounded in the reality of a regular, the Helen character, you know, that the audience is supposed to identify with. They're not grounded enough in that reality to ring true, and so they just kind of feel like paper mache dolls who are doing actions on the screen. I'm going to touch, like, really briefly on cultural theory and critical cultural theory and how this applies to Rian Johnson's films. Because like I said, he's constantly making commentary about class in his movies from the perspective of a person of a lower or lower middle class. And so I want to talk about the like wider world of class commentary. So cultural theory is basically the idea that meaning and effects are negotiated by media and audiences as they interact in the culture. Debate exists over who has the upper hand. The idea in cultural theory is the images that we have construct how we see the world. So if you, this is a very like basic example, but if you are always seeing images of Black people being violent and angry and getting arrested and doing drugs, you will assume that in reality, that's all Black people do. And that's, I think, the root of the idea that representation matters. But then the issues with representation come in when the people who are creating the representation are not of the same subject position as the people who are being represented. Marxist critical cultural theory is the idea that media operates primarily to justify and support the status quo at the expense of ordinary people. Media and other elites have the upper hand in the negotiation of meaning. I would argue that a lot of what Rian Johnson creates operates in this mode of critical cultural theory. This, again, idea that media operate primarily to justify and support the status quo at the expense of ordinary people. He's writing and creating from the perspective of ordinary people and exposing the ways in which the elites are oppressing the ordinary people and kind of trying to subvert those dichotomies and give ordinary people stories in which they can identify with the heroes and the change makers and not just feel subjugated constantly. Let me break this down. He starts his career as Rian Johnson from Silver Spring, Maryland, who grew up in Denver, Colorado. He's not from a famous family. He's basically just like scrapping to get jobs or whatever. It's a mix of good luck and talent. And then because of this experience early in his career, he identifies with ordinary people who also have to scrap to get anywhere in any industry. And the film industry is a great way to become like an anti-nepotism, anti-elite, pro working class, pro ordinary person, because as we've seen with our conversations about nepotism, you get so much further when you have a name, when you have connections. And if you don't have any of that, you understand very intimately the value of hard work. If you're able to come from barely anything and go to the heights that Rian Johnson has gone to, I think it's commendable to him that instead of identifying with the elites, he continues to this day to identify with the ordinary people that he is making films for and about, for the most part. Like, he wants his audiences to identify with Helen and Marta, two working class women of color who are trying to protect their families, protect their legacy, and fight against the people with privilege who want to basically deny the truth. So he spends his entire early career making films from this perspective, and he's still living in this perspective in his mind, but his subject position has completely changed at this point. Like I said, he created a film that grossed $1 billion. He has money. It's just like he's rich at this point. He has money, he has recognition, and he has accolades from the elite. And so he continues to identify with ordinary people, but he is the media and other elites who have the upper hand in the negotiation of meaning. And so everything that he makes from now on, whether he wants to or not, whether he's conscious of it or not, is going to be reifying and reinforcing the position of the elites, because that is to his benefit as a member of that elite class. If he wanted to make Glass Onion in a way that would truly express the self-identification that he has with ordinary people, he would either have to bring in another perspective, the actual perspective of an ordinary person. So like literally talking to one of his assistants and being like, these are the characters that I want to have in this movie. How do you see all of these people? What is your thought process about influencers, celebrities like Gwyneth Paltrow, liberal politicians, people like Elon Musk? All of these things, talk to them, understand them, and then write from that place. Or he would have to do an active process of unlearning and deconstructing the privilege that he himself has. And rather than writing a movie as if he is an ordinary person, accept that he is an elite and write the movie from the perspective of himself. Write a criticism of the rich, the famous, the elite as an elite himself. Now that in itself can be annoying, because you'd be watching the movie and be like, this guy is rich, why is he complaining about other rich people? But there's ways to make it so that it doesn't feel as like frustrating to watch. But I think that that is essentially like the main reason that Glass Onion didn't feel as successful as Knives Out, is because in the film, Rian Johnson is trying to embody this perspective that he literally can no longer access himself. There's other work that he's going to have to do in order to be able to continue to make the types of films that he wants to make from the perspective that he wants to make them. And that's the essential like paradox of being a cultural critic, of being a class critic, and also wanting to work in the film industry, is that the film industry, the establishment side of it, in order to succeed in that realm, you are going to end up becoming an elite. Inevitably, you'll either reach a level of status or wealth or fame, or all three, where you will no longer be able to identify with the proletariat, the working class, the regular person. I'm not saying that Rian Johnson is a Marxist. I'm just like applying this Marxist reading to his films. But if you do self-identify as somebody who's class conscious, somebody who is anti-capitalist, somebody who is Marxist, it's difficult to both be incredibly wealthy, an incredibly wealthy actor, actress, filmmaker, person in the film industry, and an anti-capitalist, because capitalism is the engine that runs the film industry, and the protection of capitalism is the engine that runs the film industry. Do I think that Rian Johnson no longer has anything worthwhile to say? I'm going to be honest, that remains to be seen with the third Knives Out movie and the movies that he produces from this point forward. I think it's going to be hard for him to continue to create movies with the ethos that he has worked with thus far from the position that he is in now. I'd be interested to see if and how he pivots as a filmmaker and what types of movies he makes later on. I really pray that the third Knives Out movie is not as predictable as Glass Onion was. And I actually really would be interested to see a criticism of the rich and privileged and entitled from the perspective of somebody who is in that world, and how you as a person who is in that world can actually continue to embody the morals and values and political position that you want to embody while still being a very wealthy, very celebrated movie writer and director. So, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps me find more people who'd be interested in my videos, and I was up really late filming this for y'all, so I would really appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you had any thoughts or feelings about the movie Glass Onion, A Knives Out Story, please leave them in the comments down below. I can't promise you that I will respond, especially not if you are rude, but I can promise that I will read them because I always read the comments. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I desperately have to go to sleep now. But once again, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again in the next one.